Okay, as I mentioned in one of the previous recent videos, I want to try and make up a radar mast of some form, loosely resembling a model of the GEMA Coast Watcher. Now, really, I don't think I'm going to be able to make a full-scale version of the GEMA Coast Watcher, or even worry too much about a great deal of accuracy, but it would be nice to have some form of rotational radar system with mesh panels on it, you know, which would either just spin round or you know, be able to spin it round manually, or ideally have some form of motor to drive it. So I've been looking around at what bits I've been able to get hold of, and this, for instance, is part of the seat, you know, part of the swivel chair. It's the main shaft of a swivel chair, hence the little lever there. If I push that in, I can collapse that and then it comes back out again. But there's no bearing in this. I did think there was going to be a bearing in there of some form, but there's absolutely nothing in this. So I'm tempted to think it's not really very good. There's no bearing, and to be honest, the metal it's made out of isn't very rugged. Now, I did really want to try and keep the whole thing fairly lightweight, but when I start thinking about it with a bit more depth and how to do it, it starts to become a little bit heavier duty what I'm wanting to make. So I'm now looking at a piece of scaffold pipe, which it's a bit over 2 inches thick, isn't it? Now, it's fairly cheap and easy to come by from a breaker's yard that I visit, so that's not a problem. Now, in terms of the length, now there's a good length to this thing. It's probably about 4 meters long. Now, I'm tempted to say if I had my mast about 2.5 meters tall, I think I could be quite happy with that. So that'll be 2.5 meters from floor to top. What's that? 7-8 foot, something like that. I think that's fairly reasonable. Now, basically, if this was going to be the shaft and it's going to spin, well, I've either got the option of fixing something on the shaft at the top, which will spin round on the shaft, or spinning the whole shaft. And if you want to hide the motors and things in a casing down at the bottom, well, in that case you need to really be looking at spinning the whole shaft. So this thing is quite heavy. If I stand this vertically on the concrete, so all its weight is basically standing right on its end, and then rotate it, you know, it is actually possible to turn it round, but obviously I need something, I need a bearing on the bottom for it to spin on. So if you look just there, I've got a you know, one of those roller caster wheel, and I've taken the wheel off it, and I've just got the bearing race now mounted on a 4-hole plate. Now, if I stand the scaffold on there, if I stand it on there, you can see that rotates fairly easy. So I would obviously need a point higher up the shaft on this with some form of collar, just a piece of piping which this would stand inside of, which would it would spin inside, you know. I think I could get away with this. Maybe if it was if it had a collar around the pipe about 1 meter higher, I could probably manage with it. But you can see, if I was to mount this scaffold pipe down on the bottom of that, it's actually not that hard to spin. So it's all about getting the balance right on this. If it's out of balance, then it's going to be hard to rotate, because the load isn't going to be held central on the bearing. If it's balanced and stood vertically, I might be able to get away with rotating this with something as small as a windscreen wiper motor. So I have a feeling what I need to be looking at now is possibly chopping this scaffold pipe shorter to 2.5 meters and cut the 2 arms off on that caster, and having a go at welding the thing down onto the end of the scaffold pipe. So I've put a Jubilee clip around there and just tightened it up, and then drawn a line round as a rough guide. This will probably be the top end of the thing anyway, so it doesn't have to be perfectly straight. And the bottom end there is factory cut, so it's probably a reasonable right angle on it. I'll probably check it before I go doing any welding anyway. So we'll see how we go. I'll take that Jubilee clip off and chop that off. That's a little precaution, so that'll take the weight while I'm doing the next and final part of the cut, so that it'll break open downwards. I would have used a large chop saw, which I have, but to be honest with you, it was that much hassle to go and get it out of the shed and unpack it that it wasn't really worth the time. it would have taken to do it. So you can see now it spins quite easily on that caster. So a small 12 volt motor should easily be able to rotate this. Okay, now I think it's time to use one of these old cable drums again. I've used these in the past and they come in quite handy. Always helps if the power's turned on. This is a little piece of piping I've cut off, which is slightly larger, and it slides up and spins around on it. So basically if I mount that around 1 metre away from the base, I can spin a scaffold pipe quite easily. So all I need to do is weld some struts onto this pipe here, which go down and secure to the wood on the base, and that will give me a base. Simple as that. Now for the actual parts which are going to be the radar dish, or the mesh part of the radar dish, I have these two sections of bed frame. They're about 1.4 meters high by about 1 meter wide, so it'll give me a dish which is about 2 meters wide. I know it's a far cry from the real ones, but how else am I going to transport the thing to a site unless it's a decent bit smaller? At the end of the day, it's still going to look hopefully like a radar dish, so I can basically come up with a way to bolt this square box section to the two sides of the scaffold pipe, Probably just put drill holes right through the scaffold and put 3 or 4 bolts all the way through, right through from one side. In fact, I could probably do it at the 2 ends which stick out here. Put a bolt right through there, through the scaffold and through the other piece which is just down here. So holes right through and 8mm bolts, and then one sort of around the middle. That'll give me 3 bolts. Should be easy to bolt it all together. Anyway, let me know what you think. I think it's going to work out alright.